Well, welcome everyone to the second in our two-part fall webinar series on organic agriculture. Tonight, we will learn about resources from the Organic Farming Research Foundation and National Center for Appropriate Technology. We'll gain some insight on the Organic Systems Plan, and we'll hear from a panel of local organic farmers. Tonight's webinar is supported through the United States Department of Agriculture's Transition to Organic Partnership Program, known as TOPP. TOPP is a program of the USDA Organic Transition Initiative and is administered by the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service, AMS, National Organic Program, NOP. And you can learn more at ocia.org/plains-top or scan the QR code. So tonight's webinar is titled The Organic System Plan and Farmer Insights. Transitioning to organic production involves more than just changing your field practices. It requires mastering the paperwork, accessing the right support, and understanding the economic realities. Fortunately, there are organizations and people ready to help. Tonight, we'll hear from Maya Garby about resources available from the Organic Farming Research Foundation. Ann Beyer and Andrew Coggins will speak about resources available from the National Center for Appropriate Technology, and Ann will demystify the Organic Systems Plan, a key component for getting certified. We will wrap up with a farmer panel in which North Dakota produce grower Joanna Larson and South Dakota grain grower Jaden Mikkonen will share their insights and personal experience with organic certification. So tonight, we're going to start the evening with Maya Garby from the Organic Farming Research Foundation. Maya is a Research and Education Junior Fellow at the Organic Farming Research Foundation. She has a research background in regenerative and organic agriculture, having worked for several years as a field researcher for Minnesota's Regenerative Agriculture Alliance and as a research technician for Utah State University's Plant, Soils, and Climate Department. Her involvement in agriculture began as an undergraduate at Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, where she graduated in 2023 with a bachelor's in environmental biology. She is currently pursuing a master's degree in sustainability through the Harvard University Extension School. Maya has been a member of the OFRF team since early 2025, where she has been heavily involved in the development and launch of OFRF's Organic Research Hub, an online platform hosting science-based resources and toolkits for organic producers. Welcome, Maya.
Thank you, Stephanie. So, as Stephanie said, my name's Maya Garby, and I'm currently the Research and Education Junior Fellow at the Organic Farming Research Foundation. I think I can skip my brief introduction of myself because Stephanie did a pretty thorough job, so I'll jump right in. So, just to provide a quick overview of what I'll be talking about today, I'm going to start with a quick introduction of the Organic Farming Research Foundation, like who we are, how we conduct our work, and what our mission and values are. Then I'll jump into talking about some of the resources that we have available to farmers, including some of the resources that we ourselves have produced. I'll talk about our Organic Research Hub, and finally our Extension Directory. And then I'll wrap up the presentation by talking about our Farmer-Led Trials Program, which is a program that we recently launched to help organic growers conduct small-scale on-farm research. All right, so for those of you who may not already know about us, the Organic Farming Research Foundation is an agricultural nonprofit that was founded in 1990. Since our founding, we have worked to foster the improvement and widespread adoption of organic farming systems, with the long-term vision that organic farming be the leading form of agriculture, supporting healthy and resilient people, ecosystems, and economies. So, how exactly do we structure our work? So at OFRF, we take a three-pillared or a three-pronged approach, focusing jointly on research, education, and advocacy. At our core, we are a science-based farmer-led organization, and we work hard to ensure that all of the work being done by the organization is relevant and accessible to farmers, and most importantly, that it's driven by the interests and needs of organic and organic transitioning farmers. The majority of my portion of today's presentation will be focused on highlighting some of the resources and programs that we have available through our research and education pillars. And I'll start with covering some of the resources available. All right, so on the OFRF homepage, which is accessible at ofrf.org, you can find a ton of amazing free-to-access resources. And I will walk through how to navigate to a few of these, but please feel free in your own time just to click around because there's more available than I have time to cover tonight. So this is the screen that you'll be directed to when you first navigate to the OFRF homepage. And if you hover over our resources, a drop-down menu will appear with several resource categories. These include online courses, publications, videos and webinars. We have resources in Spanish, as well as a couple of topic-specific categories, including crop and livestock integration and transitioning to organic. Real quickly, I'll click through a few of these just so that you can have a look and see what is available for you to use. And I'll start with our publications. All right, and can you see this video scrolling? Yes, no? I did pause it, but okay.
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome. All right, so the first of the resources that you'll see are our educational guidebooks. And throughout the years, OFRF has developed a 9-part soil health and organic farming guidebook series. And all of these are accessible if you scroll down and click View All Guidebooks right here. So if you click View All Guidebooks, this will take you to our series. And our series covers a variety of topics, including conservation tillage, managing crop nutrients, plant breeding, organic matter. So this covers a lot of topics. And then if you navigate back to our publications homepage, there are also an abundance of fact sheets and research summaries, general reports, as well as a 4-part guide to managing on-farm risk. All of these publications are free to access, and so chances are if you have a question about a particular topic, there's probably a fact sheet or a guidebook that's available for you to learn from. All right. Next, I'm going to quickly have a look at our online courses that we have available. So as of right now, OFRF offers a couple of free online courses. And the first is a Basics of Organic Farming Beginners course with 6 different learning modules covering soil health, weed management, water management, insect and pest management, disease management, and finally, business management and marketing. This course was developed in collaboration with the University of California's Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program. And although the curriculum was developed initially to support Californian specialty crop producers, the content in this course is based on foundational principles that are relevant and accessible to all organic farmers. So it's our hope that this course can become a go-to resource for organic growers all across the United States. And the second course that we have currently is titled Soil Health and Strategies in the Southern Region. And this course was developed to support farmers in southern states to develop site-specific or region-specific soil health management strategies. And so in this course, you'll cover a variety of topics. We'll go over some organic soil health principles. We'll talk about some of the different soil types that are abundant in the South, as well as their associated properties. And we'll also take a deep dive into some of the recent research findings in soil health studies. Both of these courses are incredibly detailed, and they contain a combination of written as well as video lecture content, and they're both self-guided, so learners can progress through the various learning modules at their own pace. Or you can simply pick and choose between the modules that might be most applicable or relevant to your needs. All right, finally, jumping back to the OFRF homepage one more time. The last category that I'll cover tonight is transitioning to organic. We'll talk about this category because that is one of the core topics of tonight's webinar, is bridging that gap between being curious about organic certification and ultimately getting certified. So if you click on transitioning to organic, you'll be navigated to a separate page. As we all know, making the decision to transition your farm or business to organic requires significant research and planning. But as Stephanie mentioned, there are fortunately plenty of resources out there available to help you navigate this process. And we at OFRF are just one of several organizations at your disposal and available to help. So depending on which stage of the transition process you're currently in, from organic curious to organic ready, OFRF has a tailored list of resources to help you with whatever stage you're at. So say, for example, that you're still in the very initial stages of the organic transition process, and you haven't committed yet to getting certified, or maybe you're just curious to learn more about what organic entails. If you click on Organic Curious, you'll be directed to a page with several resources to help you with where you're at. And this particular set of resources has an organic FAQs page. We link out to the National Organic Program homepage, as well as a link out to a USDA video series on the organic certification process. And we'll just, as one more example, let's say you're maybe a little further ahead in your decision-making process, and you're already farming organically, but maybe you need help finding a certifier or developing an organic systems plan. So if you click on the Organic Ready, you'll be taken to a separate page. This particular page has links out to the USDA Organic Integrity Database, which can help you locate an organic certifier. We've got worksheets, transitional production plan worksheets to help you with your planning process. And we've also got links out to sites that can help you better understand the insurance or risk management options for transitioning growers. And after I'm done with my portion of the presentation, we're going to hear more about the Organic Systems Plan from Ann Beyer. And just to provide a little shout out, we do have an upcoming webinar on Monday, December 15th. So that's this coming Monday. This webinar is part of our Seeds of Success series, which are farmer-to-farmer networking sessions. And this one is focusing specifically on farmer perspectives and experiences transitioning to organic in the Northwest. So pertinent to tonight's topic, but in this webinar, we're going to hear from several farmers that have recently made that transition. And they're going to talk with us a bit about what that process looked like for them, as well as some of the challenges that they faced. So this webinar is happening on Monday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard. So if any of you are interested in attending, we'd be more than happy to pop a link in the chat, or this webinar is also accessible through the OFRF website. All right, moving on. OFRF is also a proud partner of the USDA TOPP program. And in collaboration with TOPP, we've recently launched 3 additional programs to support organic and organic transitioning farmers. And these include our Organic Research Hub, which has been the bulk of the work that I've done with OFRF, in addition to our Farmer-Led Trials Program and our Seeds of Success farmer-to-farmer networking sessions. I'll start by just discussing a little bit about the Organic Research Hub. So earlier this year, which was a really exciting moment for us, we did launch this Research Hub, which can be accessed either through the OFRF homepage or at hub.ofrf.org. And what the Hub is it's an online platform that hosts a variety and a very large collection of science-based resources that have been collected and curated from the country's top agricultural institutions, researchers, and organic organizations. The last time I checked, the Hub houses about 850 resources, and this number continues to grow with time. But these resources include fact sheets and guidebooks, webinars and videos, podcast and audio clips, digital toolkits, research summaries, which are essentially just succinct and digestible summaries of recently published scientific journal articles. And you can also access some of the research findings from the various OFRF-funded research projects. All of these resources are housed within the Hub. So, how exactly does the Hub work, and how would you go about navigating and searching for a particular resource? So, if you click on Search the Hub, you will be directed to a search page. And from here, resources within the Hub can be searched by keyword. So, for example, you could type corn, cattle, or no-till. Resources can also be searched by topic, and we've got a variety of different topics to choose from. By category, and this you can narrow down by different crop type. You can search by region, and these regions are going to correspond with the USDA TOPP program. You can also narrow your search down by date range, and so if you're looking for resources that were published within the last year or two, that's a possibility. And so just for the heck of it, we're going to have a look and see what comes up when we type in the keyword soybean. So as of a couple days ago, when I was making this presentation, 42 resources come up when you type in the keyword soybean. And from here, depending on your personal learning preferences and research needs, you can continue to narrow down your search by adding or changing keywords or by filtering your search by resource type. We know that some people prefer to learn via a fact sheet or a guidebook, but we also recognize that some people prefer to learn with audio. And so we do have like webinars and podcasts, and you can narrow down your search that way. So it's our hope that the Hub becomes a reliable and go-to resource for organic and transitioning farmers who are looking for science-based guidance about specific cropping systems, diseases, pests, you name it. And we're continuously adding resources to the Hub as they're published, as they're shared with us, or as we discover them. And so over time, the Hub is only going to continue to grow in size and hopefully utility. And one additional resource that OFRF has recently developed is our extension directory. And the extension directory can be accessed from the Hub homepage. So what is the extension directory? It's essentially a list or a directory of organic farming experts from around the country. And these individuals might be extension agents, researchers, or professors, but all of them specialize in some form of organic production and can serve as a helpful point of contact for farmers who are in need of some sort of technical assistance or support in their area. So the extension directory, you can search for an individual by region or by state. and it will pull up a list of individuals who are associated with that area. I'm currently calling in from California, so let's input California and see what we get. So as of this morning, there were about, 13 or so individuals who showed up as being listed in our extension directory in California. And each listing is going to have a variety of information about the individual with their name, their current job title, the institution or organization that they're affiliated with, and contact information. And a few might also have information about which expertises they might be best suited to answer questions about or provide guidance for. And so all of this information can hopefully help farmers identify and select individuals that are best suited to help them with their specific needs or questions. Similar to the Research Hub, the extension directory is continuing to grow and will be expanding as time passes. All right, and finally, I'm going to hop into the final portion of my presentation and just talk a bit about our Farmer-Led Trials Program, which is another program that was recently launched in collaboration with USDA's TOPP. And a concept that we like to start with when discussing farmer-led trials is that farmers are researchers. Whether or not you recognize or identify yourself as a formal researcher, farming as a profession inherently requires a great deal of trial and error, troubleshooting, problem solving, and resourceful experimentation, all of which are core components of conducting research. So why farmer-led trials? The Farmer-Led Trials Program was launched in 2024 in response to feedback that we had received from our organic farming network that farmers were interested in learning how to explore scientific questions and how to conduct science-based research on their own farms. So our FLT program puts farmers in the driver's seat and allows growers to address their farm-specific questions and challenges, while at the same time minimizing the risk and uncertainty associated with developing your own formalized research trial. And our objectives with the program are to equip organic farmers to conduct their own on-farm research by providing them with some technical and financial assistance, as well as professional guidance from our team of experts. We also wanted farmers to be able to find practical and relevant solutions to their pressing organic challenges in a timely manner. We wanted to make sure that all research findings became free and accessible to the broader farming community. And finally, we wanted to build a diverse and inclusive network of farmer researchers. So, if you are at all curious about testing something new on your farm and you think that you could benefit from some technical assistance in order to make that happen, we would highly recommend that you consider applying to the program. Both the application as well as additional information about the program can be found on the OFRF website. One deadline that is approaching rapidly for this upcoming cohort is Sunday, December 14th. I do know and recognize that this would be a relatively quick turnaround for those of you attending tonight's webinar, but then again, if you have an idea already brewing for a research project, the application doesn't take too long to fill out, so we would still definitely encourage you to have a look and consider applying. But alternatively, if this is a program that sounds interesting to you and sounds like something that you might want to apply for in the future, but might not be ready just yet to apply for, especially with the December 14th deadline, a future date to keep in mind for the 2027 cohort of program participants is next October. So if you can't make the December deadline, do consider applying for the next cohort in October. And if you have any questions about the application process, like eligibility or logistics, please feel free to reach out either to myself or to Mary Hathaway, who's our Research and Education Program Manager, or feel free to drop a question in the chat. My partner Ashley is currently with us in the webinar, and so she's also available to help answer some questions. All right, so let's say that you submit your application. After the application window closes, our staff will review all applications, and if you're accepted, then you will be put into contact with our research and education staff, who will begin the process of helping you refine your research question and develop a research protocol. So you hit the ground running. And additionally, something to keep in mind is that if you are accepted into the program, all program participants will be eligible to receive a small amount of funding from us to help offset some of the expenses of smaller research equipment and supplies. So, as with any research project, program participants will follow a stepwise process for conducting their on-farm trials. And at each stage of the process, beginning with identifying and refining your research question, to developing your protocol, to collecting your field data, and then finally to analyzing your data. So at each step, you will receive guidance from OFRF's research and education team. And while we do ideally want the farmers to be the ones in the driver's seat, we also recognize that for many farmers, this might be the first time that they are conducting formal and scientific research, and that can be a daunting thing. So we are there to assist and make sure that the process is as seamless and stress-free as possible. All program participants will have up to 1 year to complete their experiment, and at the very end of the research cycle, you will conclude your participation in the program by contributing to a written report summarizing some of the key findings from your research. And you'll also have the chance to participate and share your findings and share your project in a virtual end-of-year webinar along with the other program participants. And so that's an excellent way not only for you to get excited about the amazing work that you have worked so hard for a year, but also to hear and learn from your fellow farmer researchers. Right. And I know I'm running a little tight on time. I was gonna mention and just share a couple of, sorry if you hear sirens in the background, but because I'm a little short on time, I think I'm gonna skip this example and move on to the next example and just talk a little bit about one of our recent FLT program participants and what she did for her study. So this is Maggie Dungan, and Maggie is the owner and operator of Salad Days Farm, which is a certified organic vegetable farm located in Kentucky. Maggie has been certified organic for many years and grows a variety of vegetables to supply restaurants, schools, and weekly farmers markets. Maggie had heard about the practice of solarization, and she had heard that it could be beneficial in reducing persistent soil pathogens in high tunnels. But she was a little bit concerned about whether or not solarization would have a detrimental or a harmful impact on beneficial soil microbes. So she worked with OFRF staff to develop the research question, how does solarization impact beneficial microbial communities in high tunnels over time? And she set up and conducted a beautiful research trial and ended up finding that, contrary to what she thought she would find, soil microbial biomass at the end of the 1-year experiment was actually higher in solarized plots than the non-solarized plots. And so this was preliminary evidence that solarization can provide beneficial, well, it can be an effective weed and pathogen control method without being harmful or having a negative impact on beneficial soil microbial communities. So this is just one example of the sort of research that you can get involved in with the Farmer-Led Trials program. We are always excited and thrilled with with the enthusiasm and creativity that our farmers bring to the table. And so again, if this is inspirational to you at all, and if this gives you any ideas for a research project that you would want to conduct on your own farm, we would definitely encourage you to apply. And that is about all I have for you all today. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them or drop them in chat. But thank you so much.
If farmers are accepted into the trials program, can you give us just a range? Are we talking a few hundred or a few thousand?
Yeah, I might actually need to deflect to Ashley. Ashley, do you have an exact number in mind for that?
Yes, it is $1,500.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can a farmer participate in your farmer-led trials program if they're maybe also participating in, say, a SARE farmer rancher grant?
Fact check me, Ashley, but I believe yes.
Yeah, I would agree. The point of the OFRF's Farmer-Led Trials Program is definitely to try to open up the eyes of, folks who haven't done formal research. So if someone is maybe doing their second or third farmer rancher grant, then they might not be as appealing as a candidate for us, because we're kind of looking for folks who are just dipping their toe in, but they would not disqualify if they were also doing another one.
So it actually sounds like somebody who is just starting out might start by applying to your program, get some experience, and then go on to get funding from farmer rancher grants.
Absolutely. And the farmer rancher grant, that one just closed. Is it still open for North Central, or did it just close?
Closed last week.
Okay. Yes, I was trying to keep them all straight. I'm also going to send one more link if people aren't sick of the links yet, but we do have a really nice report that goes along with the Farmer-Led Trials program that we do recommend, anyone that's applying would read this. But if you're even, just a little bit interested in research or maybe the program as a whole, this entire guide can walk you through how to go about conducting your own research. So it's also a good thing to read if you're, again, kind of interested but not sure.
Thanks, Ashley.
Calaton, I see you have your hand raised. Did you have a question?
Yes, I do. My question I was asking, for this application, you apply either for US for federal or just to go by state?
Calaton, are you asking if this is federal or state funding?
Yes, when we are applying, like you say, if you are in Minnesota, you are a Minnesota resident, we're gonna apply. If you are not the Dakota resident, where to apply?
Yeah, so I think I hope this answers, but it's open to anyone living in the US and farming in the US. So we're not, we do try to not bring all the farmers from the same state. We try to get a good breadth of farmers from across the country, but there's, as long as you're farming in the US, you're eligible to apply. And we do try to, I know that typically the program opens up every year, applications in October, and they close at the beginning of December. And that's when we'll pick usually it's anywhere from 10 to 15 farmers that we can, from a capacity standpoint, take on in the new year. So those will run through the whole year, but then in October, we'll open it up again. So I know the deadline is quickly approaching, but it's only once a year, unfortunately, that we can open it up. Hopefully that answered your question, Calton.
Yes, that makes sense. So the area was saying which they sometimes can help with application. When do you can help with that?
when can you get help for applying, going through the
Yeah,
application?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let me send you a link. Mary Hathaway, who Maya mentioned, she actually has like open availability on her calendar. So I know that, well, the only thing is it's due on Sunday and she's traveling. So I don't know if she has any time available tomorrow, but I can take a look. But if you were to send Maya, or I can put my email in here, an email, we could see about maybe getting on the phone tomorrow to answer any of the questions that you've got. But the application is due on Sunday, unfortunately.
So our next speaker is Ann Beyer from the National Center for Appropriate Technology. Ann has worked as an agriculture specialist with NCAT since 2002. She works with many partner organizations to promote understanding and clarity of organic regulations and the organic certification process, including record keeping for crop and livestock producers. She's also been an organic inspector, where she's inspected numerous organic farms, livestock operations, and handling and processing facilities to ensure compliance with the USDA's National Organic Program and international organic standards. She has helped develop organic system plan templates for certifiers and the National Organic Program. She currently has an organic garden and home orchard, where she is humbly experimenting with the principles of healthy soil management. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And I want to encourage everyone, no matter where you are in your journey, that it's a process that we never stop learning. When it has to do with farming, there's always something more to learn. So I see organic certification as an important milestone, before which you will have learned a lot, and after which you will continue to learn a great deal. I'm excited to hear about that research program, because I know a farmer who is thinking about how to manage cover crop before strawberries, and I think it would be a great opportunity for her to get some help in framing the project as much as anything. That sounds like a wonderful opportunity. So I'm going to run through a few slides just to set the context for what an organic system plan is. And I guess it would help me to know what kinds of operations you're running, those of you who have farms or ranches. And if there is, as I present these first few slides, if there's someone who wants to be a person to tell us about your operation, and then we could go through the organic system plan forms as if it were your farm or ranch, that would maybe give it a little bit of grounding. I can go through the forms, but it's more meaningful if it's related to a specific site or context in which someone is farming. So think about that. If you're feeling brave enough just to describe it in the chat, that would be awesome. And if you want to unmute once I finish the first little bit here, then we can have a bit more of a conversation. So that was a fine introduction. You don't need to know much more, except I really like being out in the field with farmers. And I learn so much from them, not only about production and what they're doing, but also about the process of certification from their perspective. So one of the things, so ATRA is a program, it's a project of NCAT, and Andrew is going to explain a little bit more about it, but I just want to put this up there in case you want to jot down the phone numbers or the email address. You can find a lot of information on the website, but there's the wonderful opportunity that ATRA offers is to actually have a conversation with a specialist, such as Andrew or myself, or somebody else that we might recommend based on what the topic or issue is that you're interested in. So jot down those numbers or take a screenshot, and Andrew will show those again. But we're here for you. That's what we do, is we answer questions for farmers and ranchers and everybody who works with them. I'm going to use the Organic Crop Improvement Association forms as an example today. And there are many, many different certifiers that are accredited by USDA. And you can choose whichever one works well for you. And if you were on the webinar last week, that was a really nice presentation that was given that provided some criteria for how to select one. Lots of other opportunities to learn online as well. But I encourage you, even if you are already certified, don't be afraid to read the regulations. I know this, let me see if I can shrink that so it doesn't cover it up. How about that? When you read the regulations, you see exactly, it's like the cheat sheet for your test. This is what the regulations say. This is what you're aiming for. These are your guideposts. And that's what you're going to use to develop your organic system plan. Of course, you're bringing in information and knowledge from your own experience as well. But it's helpful to read the regulations and see how it is that the organic certification is framed. Site-specific and fostering of nutrients. And there's a reason crop rotation is required. Let's see. And you can find those regulations on the USDA website. And if you need any help in finding the sections that are most useful to you, give Atra a call, or because there are sections that apply only to certifiers and inspectors, but what you want is the sections that apply to the producers of crops or livestock or handling, and as the case may be. Here's just an example of how to choose, where you can look at the list of organic certifiers. And the process, first step is to create and submit the organic system plan with your application. Then the certifier will review it. Then they'll assign an inspector to come out for the on-site inspection. Then the certifier will review that inspection report and make the decision. So it's really important too to give yourself enough lead time, to give yourself at least 6 months, maybe 9, before you need to sell an organic crop. That way nobody's stressed. So in summary of the organic crop production regulations, this is what you're going to find in the organic system plan. Land use history, showing that it's a 3-year transition, or really that's 36 months, the same thing, right? So it can start anytime after the last application of a prohibited material. So it includes soil improvement and health, and crop nutrient management, seeds and planting stock, crop rotation that has very specifically outlined goals, including preventing erosion and breaking pest cycles, pest disease and weed management, and then your audit trail and labeling. And then there's a lot of different little things that might be added on. So when we look at the OCIA, sorry, I've got a little bit of a cold. OCIA Organic System Plan, this is a list of documents. You can notice that they're all Word documents. So you open those up and you'll be able to fill them out on your computer. If you don't use a computer, as many of the farmers that I work with work on their phones, then it's a little trickier, and you might want to go to the library or some other place where you can access, or ask some friendly farmer support organization person to help, because most of these are easily done on a computer. Organic certification of livestock, of course, is another scope. So crops are a scope, livestock are a scope. Handling is a separate scope. And a subset of handling, of course, that a number of producers use is post-harvest handling. So very simple operations that are on the farm. And the regulations cover the origin of livestock, feed. Yes, okay, a little repetitious here. Healthcare, living conditions, and pasture management. And a number of these have been recently updated, so there are a few more sections now than there were since before the passing the organic livestock and poultry standards. So this is a list of the OCAA Organic System Plan forms. So the activities checklist basically is to tell you, like, what is it that, which are the forms that you need to fill out? Because if it doesn't apply to you, you don't have to fill it out. So you'll fill out that, and we'll look at that. So the three main parts of your record-keeping system, the organic system plan is describing what it is that you're going to do on your farm or ranch. And that's part of your set of record-keeping tools. It shows that you have the appearance of being in compliance if you've got your organic system plan that describes processes that are compliant with the USDA organic regulations for what you're seeking to get certified. So the basic concepts are, you may have inputs from off the farm, you may have products leaving the farm. And for both of those things, you need to have some kind of piece of paper or document or electronic record that shows the transfer of those materials. While you're on the farm, nobody else knows when you applied the fertilizer or when you irrigated or when you rotated crops. So those records of practices that you do on your farm is what you need to keep. So just to illustrate it in another way, records are what you do on your farm that you write down yourself. That would be when you apply things, the field activities, when you're doing pest monitoring, and then harvest records. And then when you get to sales records, of course, then you'll have a document that shows to whom you sold it. Or if you're at the farmer's market, at least the load list, if there are direct sales. Everything has to be adapted to the farm or ranch. So I can't see the chat. So if you have questions, please go ahead and ask them. These are some of the things that are covered in the organic system plan and the regulations, and for which you'd need to keep records. I'll just make a couple of comments here, like the crop rotation standard requires for annual cropping systems that you alternate species or families, and it's important to keep a record of that. So one way to keep a record would be to just draw things out and put a date on it and draw the number of rows and how many crops. Or if you're doing larger scale crops, then of course that's appropriate to your scale and to your cropping system. If you have perennial crops, then introducing biological diversity into the fields can happen in many different ways. So here we have an almond orchard that has a cover crop. So that introduces biological diversity. And then another field crop, even though they'll rotate on the field itself, this hedgerow or diversified planting along the road also is a way to provide diversification. And there are many ways to keep records of this crop rotation. You've got to keep some kind of record, but even sometimes photographs can serve multiple purposes to help you remember what was going on, but you have a date stamp and a location. So that may be another way. Natural resources, wild crop, planting stock. Just going to go through these and then we'll get to the OSP itself, because I think different appropriate records and organic system plan practices for each kind of thing. Raw manure incorporated at least 120 days before harvest of a crop that's intended for human consumption. Different inputs, they all need to be on your OSP and approved by your certifier before you use them. Here's an example of post-harvest handling. And so let's a variety of records. Let me see if I can, well, for livestock as well. Each of these parts is going to be described in your organic system plan, and then you'll have records and documents to show each of these activities. Oh, and ATRA has lots of publications to show how to do things, whether it's crop production or poultry processing, and a lot of things in between. And each organic system plan will be appropriate to your cropping system. So if you have hogs, then that's a mammalian livestock, but it's not a ruminant. So the different rules apply to the different things, different kinds of species. Let me end that show. And then is anybody interested in doing an example of your own system? Should we just start in with the crops? Okay, so here is the Word document. So please speak. Go ahead and...
Joanna, can we pick on you since you'll be presenting in a minute?
Yes, you certainly can. I'm also eating, if you don't mind that, but yes, you can pick on me.
And what kind of operation do you have, and how much time do we have to before passing the baton?
We raise about just under an acre of vegetable crops right now that I received my certification for this week, and also have about 500 acres of pasture that were certified this go around, and then have about that much again in transition. So
okay, great.
The pasture land is, just native grass pasture, prairie grass, and then we graze conventional cattle on it right now.
Excellent. So that gives us a good framework to give it some real grounding. So if we're completing, obviously your name and your farm name, operation name, ranch. And so we would check this box because if you have ruminants, then you have to have pasture, and pasture is a crop. So, and then you also have the vegetables. So yes, so that means we'll be filling out all these different OSP. We manage crops, not including mushrooms, that are not wild harvested. Okay, yeah. So if you're just picking wild berries and selling those, then that's wild harvesting or herbs or whatever. Okay, so you have animals, so you're going to have manure. So we're going to check that. Planting seedlings or planting stock. Seeds probably go into the vegetable crops, so yes. And use crop production fertilizers or pest control products. So do you use some kind of fertilizer?
So we have started a pretty large compost pile using manure bedding mix from the cattle part of the operation. So that'll be my fertilizer source eventually, once I can get that, in the spraying turned the appropriate amount of times and temperature tested. But right now, fertility has just been from the alfalfa mulch that we put on the rows. The
Okay,
plot
great.
that we grow the vegetables in is the first year it's been vegetables there, so a lot of good organic matter to work with. It was grass that had just been there for a long time, so we tilled that in, and then we got the benefit of kind of all that release of nutrients that have been there for a while.
Great.
So that
So,
might not always be the case. I mean, if someone's starting with somewhere where they need to add a lot of fertilizer their first year, that could be challenging.
okay. So it sounds like you don't actually have off-farm fertilizer. So
No,
we can look at that form C11 and see if it actually applies. A greenhouse? Do you have a greenhouse?
yep. So I have a small greenhouse that I start all my seedlings. Well, I start them in my grow room, move them out to the greenhouse, and then we have a high tunnel.
Okay. So I'm guessing you don't do mushrooms or sprouts
Nope.
or coffee.
Nope.
So we don't have to worry about those. And then grower group, no, you're just an individual. And if you're selling to the EU or the UK, so if not,
No.
then we can just leave those alone. So let's, Stephanie, how much time do we have to go through this?
So I've got you until 7:10 and then a break, and then
Okay.
Andrew's got 20 minutes from 7. You could go over a skosh.
No, let's go for that. Okay, so let's go through. I'm curious about the C11. Just maybe we can rule that in or out. So I've downloaded this from the OCI website. It's under resources. OSP forms are not always easily findable, but poking around a little bit or contacting the certifier. So this form is the materials list. So it asks for all soil fertility inputs, soil mix ingredients. So if you have like potting soil, water additives. So we're going to write down the product name, and there are a number of different places you can go to make sure that the product that you intend to use is actually allowed for use. And then the certifier, of course, will verify that. And
Yeah, and if you
approve
don't
these
mind,
things.
can I add like that, there's different like databases on the internet where you can find that stuff. But in my experience, also like the certifiers are not necessarily going to be upfront of like telling you like, oh yeah, this is like if you're looking for a product, they are not going to recommend something because they don't
They're-
want to be consultants. So
Right,
it's sometimes hard. Like you do have to go find the information yourself and then ask, does this work? Then they'll
right.
be happy to tell you yes. But those lists are, I mean, I find that a bit challenging, to be honest, but that is
Okay,
just how it
so
works.
I can, once I'm not talking, I can drop those links in the chat. You're right that certifiers and inspectors are not allowed to consult. They're not allowed to recommend products. So we can give you a list of what is the OMRI list, the Washington State Department of Ag organics list, and then a couple of others like the EPA list that are lesser known and lesser used, but still. So the important thing is to write down the product brand, the brand name or source. And I think of this usually, I've worked with like 4 different certifiers, so I haven't actually worked with OCIA. I would say that the product, you need to have the product name with the formulation. For example, not that I'm recommending it, Pyganic has a EC 2.4 and a 5.0. So you have to know which one you're using. And then you have to know the manufacturer. So I would say make sure that the brand name includes the manufacturer. Then you can look it up more easily and find more information about that. And the reason for use is important because there are some materials that are allowed for pest control that aren't allowed for fertilizer, or specific with livestock. It's a feed supplement or additive versus a medication, and then actually used or planned for use. So it's important. If you're planning it for use, then there's time for the certifier. So in general, don't use something before it's been approved by your certifier. So I think that's everything should probably go on this list. I think you would fill this out, and technically you could say that manure is a material.
Yeah.
Even though it's from your farm, it's something that is applied, so it's a material.
Yeah. And actually, I put a lot of stuff on that list that's not even part of my organic production. Like if it was a material that I was using for the cattle or anywhere else on our farm, like I farm on the same farm that my folks farm, so there's a lot of not organic stuff happening, and I put it on there and then just specify like this is not for the organic production. But then it's like really clear that I can show and demonstrate that I know which things are okay and which things aren't. So that way that when the certifier comes, there's like no question, like I'm very clear on what's allowed, what's not.
Right. And then the inspector will come and say, okay, can you show me your materials shed? And where's the organic stuff? And where's the non-organic stuff? And is it really clear that somebody wouldn't accidentally walk in there and apply the wrong thing? Okay, so this is the C 2.0. And so you would have, I would say, I prefer the term split, but some people use the term mixed because they're not actually mixed together, but your operation is split between the organic and the transitional. Parallel is if you were growing the same product and selling it. So if you have organic beef and non-organic beef, that's parallel production, or organic strawberries and non-organic strawberries. So this is just, any questions about this form? You can walk through it. The certifier should be able to answer questions about how to complete the form or how to understand the question, even if they can't tell you how to answer it. They can explain what it is asking for.
With the split and the parallel too, if you are doing parallel production, then you have to be so clear on how you're preventing contamination. Like it's quite a lot easier, in my opinion, to say, okay, well, all the vegetables are organic and the corn and soybeans on the farm are not. Like there's really not a real imaginable issue there where they're going to like cross-contaminate each other in storage or anything. But if they are parallel, then you have to be so much more diligent. So something to keep in mind if you're going to grow some organic carrots and some conventional, that you've got to be really clear on how those aren't going to be mixed.
Right, but you can tell the difference between a carrot and a soybean, so that's straightforward. Yeah, so that's this crop production overview and listing the crops. In California, of course, we have a state registration, so it's really important, like if you're selling at a farmer's market, to make sure that all the crops you're selling are listed on your organic system plan. And in some cases with the vegetables, that can get very cumbersome, and sometimes a certifier will be okay with allowing you to group them like by brassicas instead of cauliflower, broccoli, kohlrabi, each thing. And then if you have soybeans in the grain bin or something, then you want to keep an inventory record of those on this form to make sure that you can sell last year's crop, whatever it might be, as organic, even though you harvested it. Well, you have to know when it was certified and when it will be sold. But obviously, if it's already certified when it was harvested, then you can have that record clear. Natural resource management is it's part of the regulation that you need to maintain or improve the natural resources of your system. And that includes your soil and the organisms and the life in your soil, your field edges. Not every farm has like vast amounts of wild land, but how do you care for the natural resources that are even within your own parcel? I've seen some really beautiful examples of strawberry fields where you've got alyssum or vegetables, and found that those actually really help reduce crops and increase biodiversity and attract pollinators. So lots of benefits, ecosystem services that natural resources provide to farms and that farms provide to the environment, that both are coexisting in a way that is mutually beneficial. And it's part of the regulation that's verified. And so we're just about out of time. Is there a certain form that you're particularly interested in seeing? There's going to be, you're going to have livestock also. So manage livestock operation, yep. Manage conventional livestock or livestock in transition. So you said you had conventional livestock. We manage a ruminant livestock producing operation. So that's going to mean that you need to fill out the pasture plan. And then if you have laying hens, for example, then you'll have those, the appropriate livestock forms. So what else would be most helpful to cover? Annual summary of crops, livestock, pasture plan. Maybe let's look at the pasture plan just to have a sense of what types of pasture, maybe native. You mentioned some of the crops in it. What are the practices used? Mowing, rotational grazing, rest periods. Sometimes you need a place where the livestock can go when there's not good pasture. So to protect the rest of the pasture, to have a place where you sacrifice the quality of the pasture in one location so you can save the rest. How long is the grazing season? It's probably going to be a little bit different in North Dakota than it is in California. I inspected an operation here as a 365-day grazing season, and the cattle or cow-calf operation are on these just wild hills. But then, so you write down what's realistic in your area and how you keep track of when the cattle are moved and the maps.
And if you are going to do anything with the like the pasture in some sort of NRCS program, they're probably going to recommend you do some sort of prescribed grazing as a practice, and then they're gonna like already be asking for that. So then this part's really easy because you just say reference prescribed grazing plan or something like that.
Right. So yes, so that's a great point. Whenever possible with organic certification, my feeling about it is that organic certification is useful not only to get the certificate, figure out how it can be most useful to improving your operation. For example, the records that you keep, they're going to be useful for running a good business. Record keeping system, I remember some inspections I used to do were up in Northern California with dairy, and looking at the calves and looking at the record keeping. And at first it was that, at first the producers were like, oh my gosh, so much record keeping. And then after a year or two, they were saying, oh, you know what? Because I had to keep records for organic, I noticed the patterns of what was going on with my calves and what I could do to keep them healthier. When there was a problem, I figured it out faster. Similarly with a bakery, their certain kind of bread wasn't rising properly because they had all the batch sheets, all the logs. They could identify it was a specific lot of flour, that something wasn't quite right. And so organic certification, I think, in the best of all worlds, it makes your business better. It helps you observe things more readily. It can be very coinciding very nicely with food safety that you might have to have for organic vegetables, and other pasture and conservation and NRCS programs. So there's a lot of things that are really congruent about that all.
Andrew Coggins is our next speaker. He joined NCAT in July 2016, having moved to Butte, Montana from the UK. He had previously worked at, then managed, a 1,000-acre research farm for Unilever, where the farm grew commercial grains, a pig fattening unit, and conducted crop landscape and equipment research. More recently, he oversaw a series of workshops across North Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming, South Dakota, Montana, focusing on the rules, regulations, and practical challenges in transitioning to organic production systems. Welcome, Andrew.
Maybe I could chime in while you're doing that, Andrew, and just one important reminder is that every certifier collects the same information about the same organic regulations, but they all have their own forms. So you really need to choose your organic certifier before you start filling out the forms to make good use of your time.
Okay, so NCAT resources related to organic transition and production. As Anne mentioned before, we've got quite a comprehensive website. Most of it is on the APTRA program. Some is on the NCAT program, but I'll sort that at the end there. And just a brief introduction as to who I am. So if you can go on to the next slide, please, Stephanie. Okay, so 25 years with Unilever, as mentioned, 1250-acre site, 1,000-acre on the farm, and 250 acres of research complex. Unilever is incidentally an Anglo-Dutch company. So next slide, please. So basically, the farm production was a 5-series rotation involving winter wheat, spring barley, flax, or spring linseed, winter oilseed rape, and winter and spring beans, which is either faba or fava beans is in terms of a group of pulses. I always struggle with that one. We were a conventional production system working towards a lower input system and more sustainable production practices, as well as biodiversity enhancements. And we did host the first European trials of controlled traffic farming starting in the early 2000s, which is basically satellite steer systems, principally John Deere's satellite steer systems, combined with minimum tillage systems. And if you were interested in looking up that information, that was called the Controlled Traffic Farming Program, and it's very wide now across the world. Next slide, please. So, as Anne's mentioned before, most of the NCAT resources, certainly the organic-based resources, start here. And it's very hard to see, but I've outlined the menu and also the other research tabs that are on that form. And if you can go to the next slide just quick, please, Stephanie. The reason I've done these 2 slides is that depending on what system you're on, you can come up with a very different format, or looks like a very different format on the opening page for the actual website. It does have the same selection on the menu buttons on both, but don't be put off if your search engine comes up with a different front page than this. The menus on both are going to be the same, including the English, Spanish button below to connect with certain publications that may be in Spanish as well. You have to click that button to see which ones are publications, podcasts, and webinars. Next slide, please. Okay, so going down the menu, if you go to the Connect part of the menu, you come up with these 4 subcategories, and Anne's mentioned some of these subcategories already. As I say, one of the strengths of NCAT is that you can speak to a specialist more or less at any time. It's basically 5 days a week on 8-hour increments each day. So I think, Anne, it's 7:30 to 7 o'clock, sorry, to 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and it's based on Central Time. I don't know why it's based on Central Time, but it is. So there's going to be an actual specialist on call Monday to Friday during those working hours. So you speak to individuals. And as Anne's already mentioned, if it's subject matter that specialist is not specialized in, they will put you in touch with another specialist across the organization who will get back to you on the subject matter that you're asking about. So within that link specifically there, say we have the events listing. Now the events listing will include conferences and workshops that ATRA is either running, ATRA is involved in, or NCAT is running, or NCAT is supporting those conferences and workshops. Now they will be nationwide, but they'll be kept up to date, and you can just scroll down that list to see upcoming conferences. I think there's provision also to put your own conferences on there. It will be vetted to see if it can go on the system, but your own conferences can be added to that program as well. So we do host external conferences or list external conferences on that events page as well. Ask an ag expert is fairly self-explanatory. There's also provision within the website to chat, live chat, not necessarily a phone call with an expert. Similar thing to Ask an Ag Expert. And then the newsletter. And we'll go into the newsletter in a separate slide later. So that really is the Connect link on the front menu. And that will bring up this subject, these 4 subjects here. Next slide, please. Okay, so the newsletter itself is a weekly harvest. It's a free publication. If you go onto that site, you'll have the registration details to get that newsletter. It doesn't just cover organic. NCAT being such a broad spectrum organization, it will cover a lot of subjects. It will cover funding opportunities. It will cover the weekly harvest. And if we go over to the no, we don't go over to the next slide, but basically we'll cover funding opportunities, weekly harvest, current projects involved in, key events nationally, and key events involving NCAT, and a host of other information too on it, including contact details and so on and so forth. So I recommend you go onto the site and actually search through this weekly harvest, and you'll get the example of November's weekly harvest, I think, at the minute, or the latest November copy of the weekly harvest on there at this present time. So next slide, please. Okay. With this slide, now this comes under the 3 headings on the initial website. So as it says there, topics, media hub, and publications. They're all very similar for finding information, but slightly different at the same time. With the media hub concentrating on videos, podcasts, and blogs. Topics sorting all those media materials by genre. So as in previous presentations, we have a whole section on organic farming, and that will cover the blogs, the videos, and the podcasts. The blogs, I should say now, if you go onto that site, they weren't before, but they are now downloadable. So again, with blogs, if you haven't got time to read them on the site, they'll be downloadable and readable later. Similarly, there'll be videos on there too. and as I said, podcasts as well. And so there is a section there on organic farming, which is quite comprehensive to go through all the media materials. The current publications are themselves all downloadable as well. Some are translated into Spanish. I wouldn't like to estimate how many, and at this present time. It's an ongoing process. The more time we have, the more get translated into Spanish, but the key ones get translated at the minute. As I say, from the button on the main ATRA front page, you can check whether the publication is in Spanish or not. It won't let you translate it if it's not. So it's a fairly straightforward system. And again, at the bottom there with this, hard copies can be shipped. Anne's mentioned this before, but we deal with a lot of people. Certainly organizations, say like Hoodrights and some others, without access to computers. So as long as we can get addresses off people and mailing addresses, we can email packets of information, packets of documents, publications, etc. to them through the post. And we do similar things with schools too. Occasionally we'll get requests from schools for a series of publications, and we will mail them to the schools. I can certainly give you the information if needed on our publications department, but at most with this mailing operation, there'll be a minimum charge just for postage, nothing much more. So it's a very cheap. We try and make it free, but it's a very cheap process if we have to put a small mailing charge on those packages mailed out. Next slide, please, Stefan. Okay. Now, another part of this site is the internship page, where you'll see that's also listed very clearly in the main menu, and it's just called the Intern Hub. It's fairly self-explanatory in many ways, but it's a go-to site for internees seeking internships, and also farmers and ranchers looking for interns. Now, I must stress with this site that our IT section, we actively administer this site. We sort out problems with the site in terms of people registering for internships or internees. We don't actually get involved with the transaction between the interns and the internships being sought. So that's entirely between the interns seeking work and the internships being offered. As I say, we administer the site. We do vet applications that go onto the site before they're actually applied to the map. So there is a waiting time, sometimes of 2 or 3 days or more, before either party can actually register on that. But you just, obviously, you have to understand that we have to have a certain standard before that internship is posted. But once on the site, people will have their own passwords and can access that site fairly readily. It's a good idea to get involved with the IT team as well. If you advertise an internship posting for the following year, some of the times on the helpline, we do get questions whereby people have got a password, gone into their site, tried to alter the application for another year and can't alter it. Well, in those situations, we get our IT department involved. They will contact the people. Often they have to resubmit another form for that year. So it's not a continuous process. As I say, the site is monitored by our IT team quite regularly. Next slide, please. Anne's mentioned a few of these media materials. Too many to mention on this website. With the publications, for instance, alone, we have some 450 current active publications, probably more, and they're constantly being changed. But with the drop-down menu on the front ATRA page, it's quite easy to access these publications and search these publications again, by type, by genre. Organic is separated from soil health, is separated from livestock and sustainable farming, etc., etc. So there shouldn't be any problem actually accessing any of these materials, particularly on the Media Hub, which is very, very well laid out and clear. With the publications, it can be a bit more challenging sometimes. And after this presentation or tomorrow morning, I'm quite happy to send you, Stephanie, a list, particularly of the publications related to organic production or transition. I'll leave that with you. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll probably jump the gun a bit with this one here. Can we go back one slide just quick? Thank you. Before I just actually move on to that last slide, I should mention as well that we have the main NCAT site. I could put that in the chat, but basically it's a very simple link to that. It's ncat.org. And the reason I mention this site is it involves two key areas of NCAT that may or may not be organic related, but are not necessarily AT related. You'll find information on that particular site on the Veterans Armed Farm Program, which is nationwide for NCAT. So if you see what I mean, it cannot involve organic. It also gives you information on the NEAR programs and the other energy programs that NCAT has been involved in since NCAT was conceived in 1976. So if you've got an interest in energy programs, either renewable energy or energy helplines, that's the site to go to for those specific bits of information. There's lots of other information on that site too, but I just wanted to point out that two key areas of NCAT are on the NCAT website and not on the actual website so much. I would say, just if you read that final slide, we're in a series of transitions, so hopefully navigating the ATRA website will remain as clear as it is now. As I say, we're in an extensive rebranding process here, so I can't give too many details at the minute, but watch this space for the new year.
So next we have our farmer panel, and we have two farmers here with us tonight. We have Joanna Larson from Prairie Gates Farm and Jaden Mikkonen from Mikkonen Organics. And I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves. So starting with Joanna and then going to Jaden, would you tell us about yourself and your farm, including where you're located and what you grow and how long you've been farming?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Joanna Larson. My farm's called Prairie Gates in Cheyenne, North Dakota. That's in the central part of the state. It's really great to see everybody here. Thanks for having me. I think mentioned it just a bit earlier, but I do grow mixed vegetables, which are going to be certified organic this coming year because I got all of my veggie plot certified just this week, got the certificate in the mail. So this is very new to me. This is my first time through the certification process. And then we also are transitioning a bunch of pastures. So you can see some of our cattle in the background. And then I'll just quickly switch my background. So this is the vegetable production. You all can see that there. We have a high tunnel and then do a lot of deep mulching. So that's why you see the hay there. And the vegetables are sold direct market primarily, trying to get into some different wholesale avenues as well. But we have a farm stand that's self-serve, and we're opening an actual brick and mortar store that will have the produce and beef and some other local products from local growers. I also grow cut flowers, which I market directly to florists. I don't do any retail flowers, but trying to grow that and have some new opportunities for that this year. I think that covers it. I have a website. People can check it out if they want. It's prairiegates.com.
And Jaden. Oh, you're muted still.
Nice to see you again, Joanna. What was it, Bismarck that we saw each other last? Or yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And Andrew, you too.
Yeah,
Everybody.
Andrew.
And nice to see you, Jaden.
Yeah, you guys as well. My name is Jaden Mikkonen. I am an organic farmer in southern or northern South Dakota, kind of right along the North Dakota-South Dakota border. Um, I grow primarily corn, field peas or soybeans, some small grains, whether it be barley, oats, wheat, kind of depending on the year, followed by some sort of short season grain, typically some millet, buckwheat, or sunflower. Again, kind of depending on the year, just farming based on markets and what I feel like doing that year for the most part. I've been farming on my farm grounds. I grew up on our farmland. We have been certified organic since 1989, and I have been farming there since I was probably 15, 16, so 15 or so years ago, and I have myself have had my own certification since 2020, 2021, something like that.
So Jaden, why and we talked about when you became certified. Why did you become certified?
Well, it wasn't really my decision, I guess, since it was, in the 80s. It was more of a decision from my dad, my uncle, and my grandpa, I believe it was all kind of a joint decision where it was kind of an argument over who would kind of have to spray and who would kind of get, who would kind of get that unfortunate responsibility of having to spray crops. And it didn't, the 80s were a pretty bad time for farming for, kind of everybody, but it was just not it wasn't super profitable doing what they were doing, and it didn't feel sustainable without excessive growth, which didn't feel right for us at the time. So it was more trying to find what we could do to make it work at that time, and that was kind of the solution that they came to, was to try switching everything to organic, which I believe was all at once at the time. There was a stretch where we just didn't use pesticides, so we were able to transition everything at once.
Joanna, what was your reason?
I think, mainly I felt that with my goals for the local food system that I want to build around the vegetables, and then my background in ag and biosystems engineering and doing a lot of traveling, and a number of factors led me toward organic. And I always want to, kind of preface by saying that, my folks farm conventionally on the farm, and I help them farm, and I'm really proud of the work that they've done in the building the regenerative soil and going no-till, and so I'm not like a hard line, we shouldn't spray anything ever, but I do feel that if we care about our local communities and building local food systems and looking at health of both people and the environment and building a more resilient ecosystem, then we have to look at this differently than how we are. And so I think it's a big challenge, and I'm always attracted to challenges. I'm an engineer by training, so I like looking at the world, and solving problems. So that's part of it for me as well. And then being able to capture that higher value market, and also wanting the option for vegetables that I want to feed myself and my family that haven't been sprayed is important to me as well. So those were some of the reasons, I guess, if that makes sense.
Staying with you, Joanna, the next questions are about challenges that you have faced going through the certification process and how you face those challenges.
Yeah, I kind of jotted some notes down for that question, Stephanie, because I first started thinking about organic production seriously probably 3 years ago. Started attending, um, organic cropping systems tours at Carrington Research Field Days, started trying to gather information and learn about what it actually takes to be organic, and then started thinking about, okay, how could you build that into a system like the one on my family's farm where we have infrastructure available, but everything is done conventionally. So that's kind of the first challenge, I think, is that I farm alongside my parents. So how to figure out how to not only transition the farm for me coming back to the farm, but also looking at a completely different philosophy, different practice, different production when it comes to actually being organic. Um, so that's kind of the big challenge, but maybe more specifically, and just functionally with the organic process, it took about a year from the time I, reached out to the certifier and said, I want to be certified organic, or maybe even a little longer when I first started reaching out and shopping around who I wanted to work with until I got that certificate a week ago. And some of that was on me. Like I wasn't super fast and motivated to get all the paperwork filled out, but some of it was just like it takes a lot of time. Like even if you meet their internal deadlines and when you have to submit stuff, um, it takes a while for a person to come inspect and it takes a while to get information back. And then when you have to request information from your seed suppliers and your different input suppliers, then that takes time too. So it's not a fast process. And I think that's just something people have to be aware of and plan for, that if you're thinking about it, you need to do it sooner rather than later, or at least just start, because you don't really know what you don't know until you get started. Um, and I think the third one I'll just touch on, and maybe there's room for more later, um, has really been adapting the templates and continuing to improve what the record keeping looks like. Um, there's like was already mentioned by Anne, every certifier has their own templates and their own forms that you fill out, but then you're probably going to want to like modify that further to an extent, because there's just specific things about your operation, or stuff becomes clunky, like especially when you're dealing with so many crops, like I'm dealing with all of the different vegetables, that it just becomes too hard to manage some of that. So I've actually had to split stuff up more granularly, to like having entire sets of documents for a vegetable, because it just becomes too cumbersome to try to track all of that in the same sheet. So that's an ongoing challenge.
Jaden, do you have some tips, tricks, or resources about record keeping that you found useful?
When this question was initially asked, it was like, what challenges did you have? My initial thought was like, no, not really. I mean, you kind of I personally don't find record keeping or applying to be organic as overly difficult. I grew up on the organic farm, so paperwork isn't it's not anything new to me. And I think as part of being an adult, paperwork is one of the unfortunate parts of being an adult that you just kind of have to deal with. And it didn't feel overly involved to me when I was doing it. Maybe, yeah, I didn't feel it was too bad. But when Joanna was kind of going on, there was a couple that definitely she resonated pretty well, where, timeliness, not necessarily on your own, but the expectations of what you're thinking are going to happen on the way back maybe don't line up very much. I mean, even in a business to business world, there's many times where you send out an email and maybe you don't hear back in a day or two or three or a week or two. And that's not super different here, where you maybe will reach out to your certifier I guess I work with OCIA and I've never had a problem getting a response back. And if I feel I need something back quickly, I'm very quick to call and am always quick to get a response. So I'm not familiar with how MCIA or, these are where food comes from or how everybody else responds. But I have always felt like if I have a question with anything, my certifier is quick to respond. The only thing I feel like I ever have a problem with in terms of certification is, that week that I know my inspector's coming and I'm like, all right, well, I know I need my seed certification from my seed supplier. I know I need to do there's just many forms that you kind of have to do or have to have done. And that many that you can't really do yourself that you need help from your suppliers on. Stuff that you should do prior that you didn't. But that's pretty much it, is just kind of being prepared and what you need to do for the most part. And it's really just waiting on other people and being very proactive in getting that information and asking for that information for one, and then working to get that information from yourself, because as all of us have known, you can't just say, hey, can I have this? Because many times you won't get an answer. It's like, can I have it 3 times, please?
What about, from both of you, practical tips and tricks for that record keeping? Things like, are you keeping a little notebook in your pocket? Are you carrying a tablet around?
I could jump. I personally use for my FARRMS record keeping, I use Google Sheets for literally everything, whether it's yields or field work or expenses or income. Literally everything that is ever done in my farm is done in Google Sheets because they can communicate with each other. I can reference the income from this cell and put it in the expenses of, everything can communicate with each other. It is a lot of work, sure, but I think it's the most efficient in my operation to be able to make everything talk the most easily.
What about you, Joanna?
I think I'm still figuring that out, what the easiest way is. I actually just reached out to Rodell again this last week on, okay, now I've been through the certification process and I know where the pain points are. Like, how do we make this better? How can we streamline some of the records keeping where I felt like I had redundancy or where I needed more information, or so how can I make stuff clearer? So I spent some time trying to rework some of my templates, especially around recording yields. I was struggling with that because you have to be able to trace, that carrot from the time you planted it to the time you sell it. And when I sell that at like a farm stand, I don't necessarily know the exact date that carrot got sold, and I don't exactly know the exact person that bought it. So I have to figure out a way to show that that product moved through the stand. And so that's I guess it's another challenge, but I think the tip is to just utilize the resources. Like the Rodell Institute's great. Other farmers like FARRMS has a mentorship program. I personally I'm not involved in that, but I was back in Farm Beginnings, and I had a organic mentor in that has helped me, and I've been able to email him and ask him questions. So yeah, having someone figure it out on the day-to-day. I'm finding like I just write stuff down everywhere, and maybe that's not super organized, but I keep a notebook out by my scale. I have a notebook in my pickup, so at least stuff gets recorded, and then I can go around and gather up my notes and get them where they need to be. I I know it's easy, like some people are good at typing notes in their phone, but most of the time my hands are muddy or it's just not convenient to grab my phone. So I find a pen and paper is easier for me.
Over recording is certainly not an issue, even if maybe you can't find that piece of paper, but at least you wrote it down
Yeah.
and you can feel confident that it's out there somewhere, right?
Yeah. Other thing I do with the phone, I don't take a lot of notes on my phone, but I do take a lot of pictures. especially when it comes to cattle. Like I take a picture of, okay, this one got a shot, or this one was moved over here, or and then that's automatically got a date associated with it, and I can go back and add that later. And I do the same when I'm picking stuff. Like if I pick the quantity of produce and I don't have time to write that down, I'll take a picture of it. So that helps too.
Absolutely. So I am going to go over our time by a few minutes. And was there other things that either of you wanted to share? I know, Joanna, you made some notes, so I wanted to make sure you get an opportunity to share the most important things.
Okay, well, let me check my notes.
I mean, I guess the question that I highlighted is if you could offer one piece of advice to a farmer who's considering the organic transition, what would it be?
Oh, I don't know, Jaden, do you want to go first?
I certainly can. Yeah, I feel like I've had this question on panels a couple times before, and it's not a there. I feel like there's a lot of resources out here. I mean, we sit in this room with, or this metaphorical room with with everybody here, where there's a lot of people with experience in maybe not exactly growing a crop, but at least helping people grow crops, or helping people certify, or helping people literally just make their life easier in terms of regulations or certification or growing or literally whatever. And um, I feel like a lot of people, even myself included, in my time, are hesitant to reach out because you feel burdensome, and you feel like it's not your place maybe to reach out to anybody who's in here. But that's really, I don't know I've ever met anybody that has in farming in general, especially organics, who feels that way. Um, everybody's everybody wants to help, and that's maybe doesn't it really, nobody ever really feels that way personally, that everybody's out there to help you, but I've never felt anything else in farming. I've had a lot of neighbors around me where I'm in a, I have a personal, space that I don't feel great with other people, but when I'm asking about agriculturally related aspects, that's just not the case. I feel like I can ask dumb questions, or I can ask pretty much anything in agriculture to all of my colleagues, and the amount of knowledge that I've gained from those dumb questions, seemingly dumb to me, but maybe not dumb to them, is reach out to the people around you, or reach out to the people in the room, or go to events and ask people, because I've made a lot of really dumb decisions on the farm, or seemingly dumb, and it's taught me a lot. And it maybe my $10,000 dumb decision is going to save you five, or something along those lines. Is don't be afraid to ask, because somebody's done it, and that means you don't have to.
Well, I don't know if I can really beat what Jaden said, because I agree with him. Um, Adding it on maybe a little bit more of a first time experience note. I think you have to be honest and realistic with yourself about the time commitment it takes the first year to be certified. I had, previously looked through the Minnesota crop improvement templates, and I had thought, oh, this isn't that bad. I'm doing most of this. Um, and then when I got down to it, so I went with Where Food Comes From Organic, and I really started like, okay, I'm actually going to do this, last winter, this time of year last year. And then it's a lot, and you can't do it quickly. It has to be something that you just kind of work at all the time. And the other piece of advice is to really read that standard, even if you think that this is something you want to work toward in the next 5 years or 3 years. Like, take some time and at least understand that standard, because it might change your decisions today and how you want to go about things, even, down the road. So to take some time on that. And then my final piece of advice is to try to understand the markets, and this is related to scale. Like, it's pretty costly to be organic certified, and unfortunately, while I was through that process, the feds did away with that little cost share for the certification, and so that kind of hit me unexpectedly. And then I'm only growing the vegetables on like less than an acre. So to be honest, this year, and especially during this transition year, it didn't pay to do this. It was a choice that I made for, like I said, lots of reasons. And as I want to scale my production, then I do feel that this is a long-term investment. But to be realistic about that with yourself when you're going through, because you are going to put a lot of time into it. So to just try to understand that and talk with people that can help you understand those markets. That organic roadshow that Andrew facilitated in Carrington last year, that was a helpful resource for us to kind of understand some of that. And then I know Jaden has been helpful for people too, as a resource on the grains and stuff like that.
Does anybody in the room have questions for Joanna and Jaden?
I've got a quick question for both of you. You've probably been both asked this a million times. What was the most challenging bit in the transition process for you? Was it paperwork? Was it practical decisions?
I can jump here. I unfortunately, I never got to transition. I've never had to transition a single section, a single quarter, a single acre, really. Every piece I've ever farmed has been organically certified, and my answer to that would be every time I think about acquiring new land, all I can think about is the headache of transition and how to profit that ground in that transition period. So that the thought is still there all the time. The paperwork has never been too big of an issue for me. I don't know if it's because my family's farm has been certified and I was kind of thrust into it pretty early, so I have understood the paperwork, or if it was, you know, or I think it was mostly that, where I just kind of was forced into the paperwork. So there was a lot that was forced upon me, but Joanna was definitely right where there is a lot there, but one thing I would say if you're looking into it is to definitely get started early. And as you're working towards it, don't be afraid to call the company you're certifying with and ask them questions. Granted, I've only worked with OCIA, so I don't know about where food comes from and how they operate, but the amount of help that my certifier at OCIA has been to me, just anytime I have really any question about what maybe a non-compliance or of any sort is, like, hey, I want to get this rectified. What exactly are you looking for, and how can I make this easiest for both of us? If you just lay out what kind of issues you're having with a question or with a non-compliance, they want you to be certified too. It's not like nobody's ever trying to make it harder for you. They just want to make sure you're compliant. So as long as you're communicative, you're going to get help on the other hand, I think.
Well, I think for me, maybe a more seasoned farmer might say, well, there's some production challenge, or there's a weed issue, or I don't know. I'm going to have a lot more challenges going forward, I suppose. But for me, it was just all of these things happening at once. The certification for the first time, like being nervous about the inspection, starting all these records from scratch, writing an OSP from scratch, also scaling my vegetable production up from what it had been, building a high tunnel, I did that on top of all of this, you know, and then bringing my family on board and help, like making sure they understood the why, and how a lot of convincing, like just literally having to be confident in myself to convince them that this is why we're going to do this, because it's not like I didn't get pushback. And then also I navigated the NRCS programs, and that's a really good resource, and was able to take advantage of the transitioning organic management practice cost share through EQIP. But then again, that like added another thing for me to kind of deal with, and that is huge financial help to kind of, you know, if you're considering organic transition, that opportunity right now is huge, but it takes time again. So it's like you pile up all of these things and then try to learn this all at the same time. It's not for the faint of heart. I hope that in like 2 or 3 years I can tell you all it was so worth it, but I just don't know
I
yet.
I was gonna say when you started talking about equip and the program for transitioning, especially because of where we're at in the year right now, if you are thinking about transitioning to organic, applying for, you know, the equip help, and we might actually even be past the equip deadline. I'm not exactly sure when that is, but just being pretty early in the process so you have the extra time to be able to figure it out is certainly worth, you know, I don't know about y'all, but I tend to delay everything that I'm doing a little bit, you know, even though I'm going to start it on December 11th, it might not get done till January 15th. So the earlier the start it, the better. At least you can understand what you may be getting yourself into, and you can take your time with it. So
But I don't want to make this sound gloom and doom. So I also want to say that like we have seen some things like as a family through this process that have been really positive. Like we've been thinking about, like I mentioned before, the managing our pastures better and building up the healthier ecosystem and tracking like native wildflowers and thinking more about our waterways and intentional tree plantings. And so this has been a really positive experience for our family, and I think my folks would say that as well. It's not that it was like an easy thing to do, but that part of it has been worth it, I think.
it's a great little inset there. Is we don't want it to make it seem like it's unattainable or too difficult to be worth the time, because there's never, I mean, I would never transition an acre of my ground out of organic for certain. You know, I'm so happy to be in the markets that I'm in and the people that I've been around with, and, you know, to not actually be involved in, you know, chemical agriculture. I'm thankful to be in a room that I've there's plenty of times that's kind of a statement to make, but I'm, you know, it's a great place to be, I think, in this area. So it's not super overwhelming. I think it is whelming at best. So don't feel scared to do it if it's possible. It just takes a little bit of time.
I'm guessing as well, Jaden, that when you see fertilizer prices going up again, twofold, threefold, you must feel very vindicated to be where you are and not regretting this 1 minute.
Yeah, well, you know, I like to see it keep going, you know, a little bit, but I don't want to get ahead of myself too much. But I'm, you know, growing, being okay with high grain prices is one thing, but you know, you also have to raise a good crop to reap to reap that. So that definitely helps, but
yeah.
Well, thank you all for sharing your insights tonight. I think we should wrap up here. Just a reminder that you can connect with us at FARRMS anytime. We're here to help. Sign up for our newsletter to be first to know about other events like this. And we ask that you please take our evaluation survey. This helps us report back to our funders so that we can host more workshops like this. If there are further questions, we encourage you to reach out either directly to our speakers or just reach out to us at FARRMS and we will put you in touch.